Attention! If you are currently trying to find a job in Germany, today's interview is just for you. My guest and I will be talking about common mistakes job seekers do when targeting Germany, and you will learn 5 strategies for finding a job in Germany. I'm so excited that you took the time to be here today. So please welcome Jessica Schüller, the #1 Germany career coach. Hi, Jessica.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me as a guest on the show today.
Before we dive into today's topic, I have to admit this is my first interview in English. So I'm also pretty excited about today's outcome. And if you are interested in more content like this, so please leave me a message either via Spotify or contact me via LinkedIn. Okay, let's get started, Jessica. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's start.
All right. So you work with international job seekers who are targeting Germany. What are some of the common mistakes you see when they begin looking for a job in Germany?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of the common mistakes are probably ones that people would think of anyway, such as, for example, not doing research ahead of time about what exactly is offered on the labor market in Germany, what positions are available, not starting early enough, or simply underestimating the role of language skills. But I would really emphasize the lack of research ahead of time. In particular, it's really important to understand what your field or industry looks like in Germany, because a lot of times what you did in your home country will not translate seamlessly to the German context. And so that makes not only a career move to Germany a little bit difficult, but in particular, even a horizontal move. So doing the same thing that you did before in Germany, because there just might not be the same job available, or the job title you had in your home country that might have a very different responsibility set and skill set that you need to bring with.
So, Jessica, you just said that sometimes there's a job or a job title you have in your home country, and it sounds, or the name is almost the same in Germany, but you just said you have to be careful because most of the time it's not the same thing. Do you have an example for this?
Yeah, I actually have a few examples. I think some positions are relatively universal. So if we think about work in IT, the position title is normally descriptive of the work that you're going to be doing. So there's quite a bit of a match there normally. But when it comes to roles that are, project assistant, project manager, or in German, we have the position title Referent, which can literally mean anything. As you know, we have to really look at what the actual skill set, qualifications, and responsibilities will look like in order to understand if there's a match. And so one of the examples that I oftentimes give in the workshops that I teach is from my own experience. So I am, in addition to doing Germany career coaching, a higher education researcher. And when I was starting out and thinking about building or launching my career in Germany, I had to do a lot of research around what exactly are the jobs in higher education in Germany, because in the US, we have a higher education system with 4,000 universities. In Germany, there's about 400. So there's a size difference there, but there's also a very different funding structure in both countries that impacts which employment opportunities are available. So in the US, you can have an entire career in residence life, right? So running residence halls, campus community building, that type of thing. In Germany, that's not really a thing, right? Because we don't have huge residence halls on every single university campus. And so that's where when someone comes to me, and I've had this happen, and they'll bring some type of background, like, for example, residence hall director with them, it can be really difficult to transfer that experience to the German context. And I say difficult because it's not always impossible, right? There are, for example, residence hall jobs, to stick with that example, at American branch campuses or at brand campuses in general in Germany. But we then need to get a little bit more creative with our search. So just looking ahead of time and seeing, is there a position match or mismatch between what I'm doing in my home country and what I'm doing in Germany? Even just starting with that can be really helpful in structuring your search.
And what I can also understand, or what I can also see, is maybe there are some transferable experiences or skills that could be interesting for a different job in Germany, for example.
Absolutely.
So when you said in our last meeting, you said you've worked with thousands of people and coached them to landing a job in Germany. So if there was one piece of advice you would give to someone interested in finding a job in Germany, what would it be?
Based off of what I just said, I would say the number one thing I see and that I would recommend is that people spend more time upfront focusing on understanding what I refer to as kind of the lay of the land, or rather the landscape of what are the employer options, who are the biggest players in your field, what are all of the job titles in your area of work, and then even more importantly, what are some of the kind of politics around different roles? Who is hiring for what? So tracking your field ahead of time is really important. So if you have someone who is thinking about Germany as an option for their next career move and they're currently living abroad, taking 6 to 9 months to really just research and spend some time on that, do some networking to also hear from people who are actually in Germany in your field is super important. And students who are currently in Germany can do the exact same thing. I found that when people put in that time, whether they're currently in Germany or not, they are able to not only make better decisions around which organizations and positions make sense for them, but they also have much more success more quickly with their job search.
When I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, well, actually, it doesn't depend whether I'm from abroad or, as you said, if I'm already living in Germany, because putting so much time into research to understand the labor market, to, as you say, get an understanding of the lay of the land is actually interesting and important for anyone who's looking for a job, isn't it?
I would agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it is a little bit more something that needs to be emphasized with international job searches, because when we look in our own countries, we tend to already have some type of idea of what are the biggest organizations or who are kind of the umbrella associations in our field, etc. And sometimes then when we go to do that international job search, there's such a focus on which jobs are available and how do I apply. And so I just would like to encourage people to step back for a second and do that necessary groundwork before you jump into, building out your resume, for example.
Great. So, ladies and gents, if you've listened until here, thank you for trusting Jessica, because you don't really know anything about her, except that she's worked with thousands of people. So, Jessica, let's just quickly talk about you. When I look at your LinkedIn profile and I scroll right down to the bottom, it looks like the first job you did was anything having to do with career coaching. Why was this your passion right from the start?
Yes, I would say that I did have some work study positions that were not related to career coaching that don't or no longer feature on my LinkedIn profile.
Ah.
Yes. And if you're in my LinkedIn workshop ever, you'll find out why I do that. But I did actually figure out that I wanted to go into career counseling, career coaching, and labor market management from a very early age. I was a sophomore in college, visiting the career services myself, and they offered me a student assistant position. And honestly, the rest is kind of history. After I worked in career services in the US, I also did internships at a workforce center in the US and the German Federal Employment Agency in Germany. And so I was getting experience from different angles in both countries. And then when I got my first job in Germany, it actually was not related to career services. It was related to international Ph.D. student and scholar advising, and that morphed into a project management role in career services. My passion has always been in that space, like I said, from a very young age. And now the vast majority of my experience is also in that area.
That sounds so interesting because, when I think about my clients and people who've been working now for 10, 15 years in a company, and they come to me and they want some orientation, it's like when I ask them, why did you do your first job? It was, lack of experience. There was something free. I didn't really know what to do after my university degree. And then there's you, someone who has who kind of really knew from the beginning that she wants to dive into this topic and really follow up her career on this topic, on career coaching. So maybe from a different angle. So what is it that career coaching gives you? Why do you get up in the morning, for example?
Yeah, and I would just add, I think, the questions that I am trying to help people with in my work is really what fascinates and motivates me and has from a very from a very young age. And that's because I always wondered when I was in Germany, like, how do people make it here? How do they make this career work? Would this even be possible for me? Because I went to Germany as a 16-year-old, and that was something that really has just stayed with me as kind of a fascination point, I will say. Career coaching to me is a craft. It's like a trade. You have to have a certain skill set that you bring with, and every single person that you work with is different. And I really enjoy that challenge, especially when I'm working with complicated international job searches or career moves, because it is different every single time. But I still have a real skill set, whether that's, career theories, different types of career development techniques, etc., that I can offer up to my clients as tried and tested tools that push them forward and move them to where they want to go.
Great. And we're going to hear some more about this later. So you said right at the beginning, guys, language. And I mean, Germany in comparison is such a small country. Okay, with Germany, Austria and Switzerland, maybe a bit bigger, but what's your take on the importance of learning or knowing German to find a job in Germany?
So I think knowing German is not only key to a career start in the country, but I think it's incredibly important for career progression. So regardless of if you are looking for your first job or your second job, or you're trying to move up, in the vast majority of cases, language skills will play a role. And that's because if you want to move up and take on more responsibility, be a manager of some sorts, I guess, if you will, you have to know certain legal implications of the work that you're doing. You have to be able to manage finances, which might mean some type of understanding of, taxes or whatever it may be. And then depending on the work that you do, you may be working with German clientele and or German business partners, right? That's naturally part of the context. And so, yes, it is possible to find a job in Germany knowing just English, but your search is going to be much harder in the vast majority of cases. Of course, there are exceptions. I'm sure you also know this too, especially in areas where IT skills are needed, or there are simply huge labor market shortages. Employers tend to be a bit more flexible, but a lot of the people I work with are marketing and communications managers, or something, they studied something with social sciences and they want to work in something related to social and cultural management, something along those lines. You're gonna need German for. And I know Bastian, you know this too, it's an unpopular thing to say, right? You can throw a rock and hit someone who will say, oh, English is fine. That's just not my opinion, because that's not really the reality that I've seen in the work that I've done. But also, I think it's really important that we are aware of the fact, and we are communicating to internationals, that Germany is not an English-speaking country. This is a German-speaking country, and we just have to also be aware of that in our job searches.
I think, well, I cannot get the quote right, but I think it was Mark Twain who said something like, German is so complicated, it's going to be a dead language like Latin, and nobody's going to speak it. And
he definitely had issues with the German language. Yeah.
he did, absolutely. Okay. So if I'm listening here and I would like to start trying to find a job in Germany, how long would it take?
I love this question. It's one of my favorites.
I thought so.
It's one of those that I try to get a little bit creative around answering, because of course the real answer to this question is it depends, but everyone hates that answer, and I do too. So if you are going to be looking for an internship or a working student job, if you're currently a student in the country, you should plan, 3 to 6 months in advance looking for such a role. If you're looking in the country, maybe you're on a job seeker's visa or similar, maybe you just want to change jobs, 6 to 9 months. And if you're looking from outside of Germany, 9 to 12 months, and actually probably even longer, especially if you need to upskill or if you need to refresh your German language skills. For most people, though, I would say a 6 to 9 month search period is about what I'm seeing right now. But Bastian, you know this too, like it will change depending on what is the health of the economy, what hiring season it is, and then of course, what is that person bringing with for an applicant profile, and does it match or correspond with what employers need right now?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And fun fact, even if you are not from abroad, even if you are a German-speaking citizen, it doesn't matter. A career change can take up to 6 to 9 months if you want to work in a different role or move up the ladder, for example. Okay, so now I know how long it takes. How many applications should I send? Should I send, I don't know, 5 applications on a weekly basis? And please don't give me, it depends.
No, so also for this, what I recommend, I have a very specific way of going about this that tends to work for people. So the first thing here is you should not be asking how many applications, but how good are your applications? So you really want to focus on quality over quantity. I've had some people come to me, and I'm thinking of one case in particular, and this person was just having a hard time. They had applied for, I think, 30 or 40 jobs, no callbacks. We were able to switch up her strategy a little bit and also, in particular, make sure her application documents were fit for the German labor market. And she was one of those who was getting then callbacks within a couple of weeks. So this really matters. Quality matters. And the only way to really get to the quality is actually that research component that I talked about earlier. Now, of course, I'm sure there are listeners who are like, but really, how many should I be doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
But thank you for the example anyway, because it's important to understand what work you should do in the beginning. And yes, application documents are absolute key, especially in Germany.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I would just add on to that. I think that last point you mentioned is super important because we see a lot in the interwebs about AI and ChatGPT. And I've also seen in my coaching practice in the last couple of months, a lot of ChatGPT generated cover letters. And I'm sure you've seen this too. You can tell right away. And this is just not going to fly with a German employer. So paying attention to that. If you've done your research and you've developed high quality kind of baseline application materials, especially like kind of a resume that you can reuse, then focusing in on 1 to 2 applications per day, if you're doing a full-time job search, would be realistic from my perspective. Now, of course, there's ways you can up that number. So I do have clients also work with LinkedIn Easy Apply, which used to not be super helpful, but I am seeing that change a little bit, that's actually a good avenue right now. So 1 to 2 a day, I would say, is probably realistic if you are actually doing the research and focusing on the quality of the application. And especially for those of you who are going to be applying in German, that also involves the Vier-Augen-Prinzip, which means you're showing your application to other people so that they are also checking it as well for you.
What I've also realized in the last couple of months when I worked with people from abroad or even people who are already here and they don't speak German so well, is that most of the job search is done via LinkedIn. And you just said it's a good idea. Of course, yeah, use LinkedIn definitely because it's in your language and everything. But what kind of job boards would you recommend to job searchers apart from LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up, that there's very much so a focus on LinkedIn, which when you focus, you limit. And sometimes you want to limit, but in this case, especially when you're starting out, that's not necessarily a great thing to do. So I still love working with Xing and the Xing job boards. And I do recommend that to all of my clients because there are a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises in Germany that are definitely still posting their job opportunities on Xing. And it is also possible to have an English language profile on there. Beyond that, I normally recommend some form of diversification when it comes to the sites that you're using. So, of course, depending on the field, that might be a national job board, like the one from the German Federal Employment Agency, the Jobbörse. That might be a regional one for a specific state, like Baden-Württemberg, for example, has some. That might be a city location, right? But then we also need to look field specific, okay? And the field specific roles are going to be, for example, found on professional association websites. So professional association in German is a Berufsverband. So even just Googling whatever you do plus Berufsverband can lead to one of those professional association sites,
Absolutely.
Right? Because in Germany, we love to have clubs and associations and all the
Absolutely. Yeah. Totally agree.
And they often, yes, and they often have job boards. And so then you have a curated job board of just whatever it is you do, all in one place. Okay. So there's many different ways that you can diversify like that. And in doing so, whenever you're looking for jobs, you shouldn't just be looking at the positions. You should also be looking at the companies and going to their employment or career pages because, and I'm sure you're aware of this as well, it's expensive to post jobs. So sometimes only the managerial positions or the most important ones or the ones that are hardest to find people for are posted on LinkedIn. So you're probably missing out if you're only using LinkedIn.
Totally. And I agree with so many things. And one thing I would like to add, if you're already located in Germany, is of course career fairs. There are so many career fairs now out there. And there are career fairs for people who are just starting after university, but there are also career fairs from Berufsverbänden, for example, or Gewerkschaften like the VDI, for example. It's the for engineers, the Berufsverband, and they have their own career fair. So this could also be interesting to get out, because the next question is, in what ways do international applicants tend to miss the mark, Jessica?
Yeah, and I think going beyond what we've already talked about, right? So knowing the lay of the land, focusing on quality applications, going slow with your search, all of those components are really important, and they can be either mistakes or strategies, right? Yeah. I think something that we sometimes don't focus on enough are interpersonal and intercultural relationships and communication that happen throughout the job search. And so in Germany, trust and humility go a really long way. And what that translates into is that, for example, in your application documents, it's really important you are just stating the facts about what you can or cannot do, right? So listing the level of the skills that you have is important. And not with the bars that no one can interpret, right? Or with dots, but really like writing out what the level is so that the employer has a good idea of what you can and cannot do in that specific role. And that's okay. They will appreciate much more so your honesty than they would if you were to maybe not be as honest and then you show up and you're not able to actually deliver on the thing that you're supposed to be able to deliver on. Because in the German context, there is very much so a focus on kind of a preset skill set coming into a job. And that looks different in other countries where there's a focus on a transferable skill set. Now, I could go off on a tangent about how that is changing in Germany, and I'm sure you've seen this too, and there are employers who are learning to value transferable skill sets, and we can market that, all the things. But in general, building that trust in the application is really important. And then also later on in the interview, right? So it is perfectly fine from my perspective to also, talk openly about your plans to come to Germany or stay in Germany. Maybe you already have an apartment set up, that type of thing. Trust and humility can really just go a long way.
Getting to know the lay of the land. This is something you said at the beginning, but it's not only research and sitting in front of the computer, right?
That's right. And I think there's really an important point that you have to reach once you've kind of done your research and you have a good idea of, which companies or organizations are interesting to you, where you then need to move out of the digital and into the analog and start to actually meet with people, right? And so if you're in Germany, that could be a little bit easier because you could physically meet with people. But even if you're not, right, asking someone to have a short conversation with you about their role at a German company can be a really great place to start. And because it can be difficult to ask people for that, especially in the German context. What I normally tell people is start with the alumni of your, previous university or universities who are working in Germany. So on LinkedIn, you can easily go to your university page and filter for the alumni from your university who are working in Germany. Start with them first, because then you already have a common ground, you have a connection there.
Yes, absolutely. And when it gets to the conversation moment, what I've experienced, people like to talk about themselves. So just try to focus on asking them as many questions as you can. And yeah, I mean, it sounds a bit kind of cheesy, but show interest. Be interested in what they have to tell you, and ask about the pros and cons also about their job. So it's very good to. And you can also meet online. That's just something I wanted to add. This can be very helpful to have these conversations. And I give this, what you just said, Jessica, I give this recommendations also to people who, as I say, who are not from abroad, who've been working in Germany for so many years. Reaching out to people out of your network, or maybe also part of your network, can be really helpful. So how can expats or international applicants set themselves up for success in finding their first job in Germany?
So beyond what we've already touched on and discussed, I would say another big kind of bucket of things to think about would be entry avenues. So entry avenues are kind of ways into the German labor market. Many people think, think of the education to employment avenue. So you come in Germany and you study, and then you get an 18-month visa to look for a job. That's an example of an entry avenue. There's also the job seekers visa, right? But depending on your personal situation, there might be, for example, if you're currently a student abroad, there might be an opportunity for you to do an internship over the summer in Germany. And that could be, like it was in my case, for example, what leads to a job opportunity. If you are a working professional currently, living abroad, not in Germany, there might be different volunteering opportunities for you, for example, with professional associations that will only take a couple hours of your week, but will connect you to professionals in your field, right? And get you kind of related to the German context and what's happening there in your specific area of work. So thinking about the different entry avenues, and I do have a list of these on my website as well, if there's over 12 of them, is really key, because there might be things there that you don't realize are actually really excellent options for you.
I like this picture of an entry avenue. It's like so many doors you can open, and that makes it easy for you. Perfect. Jessica, there was so much helpful information in this interview so far. And before we do the recap, I can imagine so many people who are listening at the moment, they think, okay, where can I get more from Jessica? Where can I listen to Jessica, for example? And that was actually the buzzword, because you are the host of the podcast Inside Deutschland, Your Guide to Careers in Germany. So tell us a little bit more about this podcast, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the host of the podcast Inside Deutschland, Your Guide to Careers in Germany, which is a podcast by the Alumni Portal Deutschland. And in the podcast this season, we're focusing on going from thinking about, do I want to consider Germany for my career? What are kind of the regulations around that? All the way to topics such as, what do I do around topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion at the workplace in Germany? What does that look like? Okay, so we're covering kind of the introduction basically to working in Germany this season. And every single episode features both an expert from that specific topic area, as well as an alumna or alum who has kind of, quote unquote, made it in Germany, especially in relation to that specific topic. So definitely check that out. Inside Deutschland, Your Guide to Careers in Germany, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, same as where you'll find Bastian's podcast as well. And if listeners are interested in connecting with me, they can do so on germanycareercoach.com. There's tons of resources for free available there, including, for example, the list of entry avenues.
Did you know, Jessica, that I've already recommended to so many clients your stuff, your checklists
thank you.
and blog articles? Yeah, because I think I found it very helpful, and I have a couple of clients who came from a different country, worked in this company, and now the company they have moved to Germany, and the company has given them the chance to look for a different job in Germany. So yeah, recommending your material and everything, it's very helpful for them. So thank you. And
thank you.
Dear listener, you will find all this information in the description to this episode. So, okay, as promised, let's do the recap and let's summarize this to, let's say, 5 strategies. So what are the 5 strategies, Jessica?
Yes. So I love lists and I love summarizing. So let's break this down into 5 kind of different areas that listeners can focus on. The first would be simplify. So remember back to the beginning of the conversation, reducing the amount of transitioning you plan to do by thinking about, okay, you're already making a geographical change to Germany. Let's not change your field or the position level. Think about horizontal moves if you're coming from abroad. But then importantly, and this is connected to simplifying, research, doing your research around what is the lay of the land, right? What are the organizations, the companies, the positions in your specific field in Germany, and how does that match or mismatch what you've been doing in your home country? Then strategize your application strategy, right? So this is where we want to have you focusing on quality over quantity and work with a career coach who knows German. And I think this is really important, Bastian, and you'll probably agree with me on this. It's really important to have someone who is linguistically and culturally very familiar with Germany and applying in Germany, because you cannot just translate, things you see online about Anglo-American applications to the German context. So make sure you have a real application strategy in place. Engage would be my next step. So the 4th one. So this is where you want to make sure that once you've done kind of your lay of the land research and you're strategizing your applications, that you're also engaging, you're talking to people. You are starting to really reach out and get to know real life human beings and not just sitting behind a screen. And the 5th stage would be to acquire. And I know this is going to be the hardest stage, but acquiring German language skills is important. So while some of you are going to be looking for work in English, and that's perfectly fine, especially if you're starting out, start learning German early and start, kind of making those short, increments, a thing that you do every morning when you drink your coffee or whatever it is, so that you are continuously making progress. If you plan to start or grow your career in Germany, the effort you put into learning German will pay dividends later on. So just to recap, our 5 strategies: simplify, research, strategize, engage, and acquire.
Guys, I don't know what you think, but I think that was so helpful. Also to understand, as you say, the lay of the land, Jessica, was really great. And also how you can do the research. And I like that you also explained how long it takes and how many applications I should send. And yeah, and that was so helpful. So first of all, thank you very much for your time today for this interview. And as I said at the beginning, if you think this was helpful and you want more interviews in English language, just leave me a message on LinkedIn and I will see what I can do. And now I would just like to say thank you. Thank you for listening today. And as usually in the German language podcast episodes, the guest always has the famous last words. So I'm saying goodbye and I'm giving the microphone to Jessica Schüller. Thank you.
Thank you, Bastian, again for inviting me. And I would say my last words for everyone is, while there are a lot of challenges, and it might seem like that at first, there's also so many options and opportunities in Germany. I like to say that Germany is a career candy shop, and I really believe that for the people who are willing to strategize and do a lot of the things that we talked about today. You've got this, start early, and good luck.